Part 1. Admiral Han Wool stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and watched the stars bend around his ship. The viewport showed a massive nebula ahead, glowing purple and blue like a cosmic curtain. Beyond that curtain lay Council space, home to dozens of alien civilizations that humanity had only dreamed about for centuries. He was an old man now, with silver hair and tired eyes. His uniform carried medals from wars he wished he could forget. The Outer Colonies' war had ended 20 years ago, but Han Wool still saw the faces of soldiers who died under his command. He still heard their screams in his sleep. Behind him, Captain Ji-Hai checked the weapon systems for the third time. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Han Wool had trained her himself, taught her everything he knew about space combat. He hoped she would never need to use those lessons. Ambassador Yuna walked onto the bridge, her formal robes flowing behind her. She looked calm, but Han Wool noticed her hands were shaking slightly. This meeting would decide humanity's future. Either the Galactic Council would welcome them, or humanity would remain alone in the dark spaces between stars. Dr. Tai Yang followed her, carrying a datapad filled with information about human culture and history. He was a kind man who believed in peace above all else. Han Wool liked him, but worried that the doctor's gentle nature would be crushed by what they might face ahead. The communication officer spoke up. His voice cracked with nervousness. Ships were appearing on the scanners, dozens of them, all different sizes and shapes. Nothing like human vessels. These were alien craft built by minds that thought in ways humans could barely imagine. The largest ship moved forward. It was elegant, made of some material that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. A voice came through the speakers, translated by computers into perfect English. The voice was deep and slow, like rocks grinding together. It was High Chancellor Vorath of the Telvari Collective. He welcomed the humans to Council space, but his words felt cold. He said the Council had watched Earth for a very long time. They had seen humanity's wars, their violence, their countless mistakes. They had waited to see if humans would destroy themselves before reaching the stars. Humanity had surprised them by surviving. Now the Council had to decide what to do about these violent newcomers who had finally learned to travel faster than light. Ambassador Yuna responded with careful words. She thanked the Council for this opportunity. She spoke about human achievements in science, art, and philosophy. She talked about the diversity of Earth's cultures and the beauty of human creativity. Han Wool watched the alien ships through the viewport and felt uneasy. Something about this felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. He had learned to trust these feelings during the war. They had kept him alive when logic said he should be dead. The Council ships escorted them to a massive station that floated in the center of the nebula. The station was beautiful, covered in lights that pulsed in patterns that might be writing or art or something humans had no words for. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports. Inside the station, the human delegation walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. They passed aliens of every imaginable shape. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated in the air or crawled on walls. Some were made of something that looked like living crystal. Others seemed to be clouds of glowing gas held together by force fields. Dr. Tai Yang stared at everything with wonder in his eyes. Ji-Hai kept her hand near her weapon, though Han Wool had ordered everyone to go unarmed. Old habits died hard for soldiers. They entered the Council chamber, a huge room with seats arranged in a circle. Each seat held a representative from a different species. The humans were shown to a small platform in the center, like criminals waiting for judgment. High Chancellor Vorath spoke first. His people were made of silicon, not carbon like humans. They thought slowly but lived for thousands of years. To them, humanity was like a child having a tantrum with a loaded gun. Another counselor spoke next. This was Shirath of the Kethros Empire. The Kethros looked like giant insects covered in armor plating. They were warriors who valued honor and strength. Shirath's voice was harsh and challenging. Shirath activated a hologram in the center of the chamber. Images appeared showing Earth's history, but not the good parts. The hologram showed wars, genocides, nuclear explosions, cities burning, oceans poisoned. It showed humanity at its absolute worst. The images were real. Humanity could not deny them. These things had happened. Humans had done terrible things to each other and to their own planet. Ambassador Yuna stood tall despite the damning evidence floating around her. She spoke carefully. Yes, humanity had made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But they had also learned from them. They had grown. They had changed. She talked about the unity accords that ended the last Great War. She described how former enemies now worked together to heal Earth and reach for the stars. She explained that humanity's violent past had taught them the true value of peace. A strange voice interrupted her. It sounded like music and mathematics combined. This was Prime Harmony Velith, a collective consciousness made up of millions of individual beings who shared one mind. They spoke as one, and their words cut deep. Velith said that words were easy. Anyone could claim they had changed. The Council needed proof. Humanity would be tested. These tests would examine not just their technology, but their character, their wisdom, and their ability to solve problems without violence. High Chancellor Vorath explained the rules. The human delegation would remain on the Council station for 1 standard month. During that time, they would face various challenges. How they responded would determine if humanity deserved a place among the galactic community. There was something Vorath did not say, something hidden in his slow, careful words. Han Wul heard it anyway. The Council was not united on this decision. Some wanted humanity as allies, others wanted them as servants, and some wanted to make sure humanity never left this station alive. The session ended and the humans were shown to their quarters. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for species with different needs. The beds were too soft, the gravity felt slightly wrong, and the air had a metallic taste. That night, Han Wul could not sleep. He stood by the viewport in his room looking out at the alien ships docked at the station. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of worlds all living in peace together. It was beautiful. It was everything humanity had fought for, but it also reminded him of the calm before a battle. Everything looked peaceful, but tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. Ji Hai found him there an hour later. She stood beside him in silence for a while, then asked if he thought they would succeed. Han Wul thought about all the battles he had fought, all the impossible situations he had survived. He thought about the price humanity had paid to reach this moment. Then he told her the truth. He did not know if they would succeed, but he knew that whatever tests the Council threw at them, humanity would face them the same way they had faced everything else. With courage, determination, and the hard-won wisdom that came from surviving their own worst impulses. The real test, he said quietly, would not be proving that humanity could be peaceful. Every species claimed to want peace. The real test would be proving that humanity knew when to fight and when to show mercy, that they understood the difference between strength and cruelty, that they had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose not to use your power. Outside the viewport, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out in that darkness, humanity's future was being decided by beings who did not trust them and had good reason not to. The tests would begin tomorrow. Whatever happened, humanity would show the galaxy who they really were, not the monsters from their past, but not helpless children either. They were survivors, warriors who had learned to build instead of destroy, fighters who now understood when not to fight. They were humanity, and they had come to the stars carrying all their scars and all their hope. The galaxy would have to decide if that was enough. The first test came 3 days after humanity's arrival. 2 small alien species had brought a dispute to the Council, and Ambassador Yuna was asked to help solve it. The problem seemed simple at first, but it was actually a trap designed to make humanity fail. The 2 species were fighting over mining rights to an asteroid field. Both had valid legal claims under Council law. Both needed the resources desperately. The conflict had been going on for decades, and previous mediators had given up. Yuna spent 2 days studying both cultures, learning their languages, understanding their needs. Dr. Tai Yang helped her research their histories and traditions. What they discovered was that neither side really wanted the minerals. They wanted respect. They wanted to be acknowledged as important. Yuna proposed a solution that surprised everyone. Instead of dividing the asteroid field, she suggested both species work together to mine it. They would share the resources equally and split the profits. More importantly, they would create a joint cultural center on the largest asteroid, where both species could celebrate their heritage together. It worked. The 2 species agreed, ending their long conflict. But instead of congratulations, Yuna received suspicious looks from several council members. Prime Harmony Velith stated coldly that the solution was too creative, too unusual. They implied that humanity must have cheated or manipulated the situation somehow. That night, Yuna sat in her quarters feeling defeated. She had done everything right, and still it was not enough. Han Wul found her there and told her something important. The council did not want them to succeed. They wanted them to fail so they would have an excuse to reject humanity. The second test was worse. Dr. Taeyang was invited to participate in a cultural exchange with the Velith collective consciousness. It was supposed to be an honor, a way to share human knowledge and experience with beings who thought in ways humans barely understood. The Velith connected directly to Taeyang's mind. They saw his memories, his thoughts, his emotions. They experienced what it meant to be human, and they were horrified. They saw wars through his eyes. They felt fear, anger, hatred, grief. Even though Taeyang was a peaceful man who had never hurt anyone, his memories contained violence because he was human and had lived through violent times. The Velith could not understand why humans carried such darkness inside them. They broke the connection suddenly, leaving Taeyang collapsed on the floor. He woke up in the medical bay hours later, shaking and crying. He told Han Wul that the Velith thought humans were monsters, not because humans chose to be evil, but because violence was woven into the fabric of human nature itself. Taeyang started questioning everything. Maybe humanity did not deserve to join the council. Maybe they were too dangerous, too broken, too scarred by their history. Maybe the galaxy would be safer if humans stayed in their corner of space forever. Then came the third test, and it was the most obvious trap of all. Councillor Shirath demanded a military demonstration. He claimed it was standard procedure, but everyone knew it was not. The Kethros warrior wanted to see how humans fought. Captain Ji-Hai was given command of the exercise. She would lead 3 human ships against 6 council vessels in a simulated battle. The rules were simple. Disable the enemy ships without destroying them. The first side to disable all enemy vessels would win. Ji-Hai knew this was a trap. If she fought too aggressively, the council would call humanity violent. If she fought too defensively, they would call humanity weak. There was no right answer, only different ways to fail, so she decided not to play their game. She would fight the way humans actually fought, using every advantage they had learned through centuries of warfare. She would show the council exactly what humanity was capable of. The simulation began. The council ships moved in standard formations, using tactics they had practiced for thousands of years. They were efficient, precise, and predictable. Ji-Hai's ships moved like wild animals. They broke every rule of proper space combat. They used debris as weapons, turned system malfunctions into advantages, and attacked from angles that should have been impossible. Her ships moved with controlled chaos that confused and overwhelmed the council forces. In 7 minutes, all 6 council ships were disabled. The human vessels had suffered minor damage. The observers sat in stunned silence. Councillor Shirath stood up, his insect eyes gleaming with what might have been respect or fear. He declared that humanity's combat abilities were indeed impressive. Too impressive. Prime Harmony Velith immediately argued that this proved humanity was too dangerous to join the council. Ji-Hai realized she had walked right into their trap. By fighting well, she had given the council exactly the evidence they needed to reject humanity. That evening, the human delegation gathered in Han Wul's quarters. Everyone was frustrated and angry. They had passed every test, but the council kept moving the goalposts. No matter what humanity did, it would never be enough. Then something strange happened. A figure appeared in Han Wul's quarters without warning. Security systems did not detect it. The door never opened. One moment the room was empty. The next moment a being stood there. This was Observer Kill, one of the mysterious council members who rarely spoke. Kill's species had no fixed form. It looked different every time you blinked, shifting between states that human eyes struggled to process. Kill told them the truth. The council was not testing humanity to see if they deserved membership. The council was already divided on that question. Some species wanted humanity as allies. Others wanted them as subjects who could fight the council's battles. And some wanted humanity destroyed before they became too powerful. The tests were designed to gather evidence for whichever side won the internal political battle. Every action humanity took would be used by someone to support their agenda. Kill said something else, something that made Han Wu's blood run cold. The real test had not started yet. Soon, humanity would face a situation that would reveal their true nature. How they responded would determine not just their council membership, but possibly their survival as a species. Before anyone could ask questions, Kill vanished the same way it had appeared. The humans were left staring at empty air, wondering if they had imagined the whole encounter. Strange things started happening after that. Equipment malfunctioned in the human quarters. Messages were altered in transmission. Someone was sabotaging their efforts, but they could not prove who or why without causing a diplomatic incident. Yuna tried to investigate quietly, but every lead went nowhere. Jihai increased security, but the sabotage continued. Taeyang grew more depressed, starting to believe that humanity's presence was causing harm just by being here. Han Wu watched it all with growing concern. He had lived through enough wars to recognize when someone was trying to provoke a response. Someone wanted humanity to lash out, to show their violent nature, to give the council an excuse to act against them. 2 weeks into their stay, everything changed. An emergency signal came through the communication system. A human colony on the edge of council space was under attack. Raiders were hitting Kepler Station, one of humanity's newest settlements. Thousands of civilians were in danger. The message included video footage. Buildings burning, people screaming, children crying. The raiders were not taking prisoners. They were destroying everything. Jihai immediately prepared the fleet to respond, but High Chancellor Vorath appeared on screen within seconds. He forbade humanity from taking any military action. The evaluation protocols were clear. Humans could not use force while under council observation. If they violated this rule, their application would be rejected permanently. Yuna begged the council to send help, but Vorath said the station was outside council jurisdiction. They could do nothing. Humanity had to choose between saving their people and following council rules. The delegation looked at Admiral Han Wu. He was their leader. The decision was his. Han Wu did not hesitate. He gave the order. The fleet would launch immediately to defend Kepler Station. Politics did not matter. Rules did not matter. Those were human lives at stake, and he would not abandon them to die while he stood by watching. Yuna tried to stop him, explaining that this would destroy humanity's chances. Taeyang pleaded for another solution, but Jihai was already running toward the docking bay, and Han Wu followed her. As the human ships prepared to leave, High Chancellor Vorath delivered a final warning. If they left council space, they would not be welcome back. Humanity would be declaring themselves enemies of the galactic community. Han Wu's response was simple and cold. If being part of the galactic community meant abandoning his people to die, then humanity wanted no part of it. Some things mattered more than politics. The Indomitable and its escort ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the council station behind. They were heading into a battle that might cost them everything. But for Admiral Han Wu and everyone who followed him, there was no other choice. Sometimes being human meant doing what was right even when the whole galaxy told you it was wrong. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. What they saw made even Admiral Han Wu's stomach turn. The colony station was burning. Escape pods floated in space, some intact but many destroyed. And surrounding the station like sharks circling wounded prey were 30 raider ships. These were not small pirate vessels. These were military-grade warships with heavy weapons and strong shields. Someone had armed these raiders very well, too well for simple criminals. Captain Jihai analyzed the enemy formation from her tactical station. She turned to Han Wu with worry in her eyes. This was a trap, she said. The raiders knew they were coming. They were positioned perfectly to ambush the human fleet. Han Wu had suspected as much. The timing was too convenient. The attack happened exactly when humanity's fleet was furthest from home. Someone had planned this carefully, wanting to test humanity or destroy them or both. But it did not matter. There were civilians dying on that station. Human families who had come to the frontier hoping for a better life. Han Wu had not abandoned people during the Outer Colonies War, and he would not start now. He gave the order to attack. The human ships moved forward in a formation that looked chaotic but was actually carefully planned. They had studied the raider positions and found weaknesses. Now they would exploit those weaknesses with everything they had. The battle was brutal. The raiders fought well, better than pirates should. Jihai realized they must be mercenaries, professional soldiers hired by someone with deep pockets. That made them dangerous, but it also made them predictable. Mercenaries fought for money, not for belief. They would run if the battle turned against them badly enough. Hanwol used tactics from the old wars, strategies he had hoped never to use again. He sent 2 ships to attack from the front while the rest circled around. He used the station itself as cover, hiding his ships in its shadow. He even ordered 1 damaged ship to pretend to retreat, drawing raiders into a trap. Dr. Taeyang watched from the bridge, his face pale. He had read about space combat, but reading and seeing were very different things. Ships exploded in silent flashes. People died in those explosions, vaporized in an instant. The doctor had to turn away. The human fleet was winning, but at terrible cost. 3 ships were destroyed completely. 2 more were badly damaged and had to retreat. Hundreds of crew members were dead or wounded. Every victory in war came with a price, and the price was always paid in blood. Then the situation got worse. The raiders had taken hostages from the station and were holding them on their command ship. They sent a message: surrender or the hostages would be executed. Hanwol stared at the tactical display. The raider command ship was damaged but still dangerous. Taking it intact would be nearly impossible. Destroying it would kill the hostages. Those hostages were civilians, colonists who had done nothing wrong. Parents and children, engineers and teachers, people who just wanted to live in peace. Ji Haye found a possible solution. She could target the command ship's engines with precision strikes. It would require perfect accuracy and perfect timing. If they succeeded, the ship would be disabled and they could board it to rescue the hostages. If they failed, the hostages would die. There was another option. They could negotiate, offer the raiders money or safe passage. But Hanwol knew that would not work. These raiders were being paid by someone powerful. They would take any ransom and still kill the hostages to complete their mission. So Hanwol made the hardest choice a commander can make. He ordered the precision strike, knowing some hostages would probably die even if everything went perfectly. War forced impossible choices. You could only try to save as many as possible, and live with the guilt of those you could not save. Jihai executed the attack flawlessly. The raider command ship's engines exploded, leaving the vessel dead in space. Human Marines boarded immediately, fighting through the corridors to reach the hostages. They saved most of them, but not all. 17 hostages died in the battle, killed by raiders or caught in explosions or suffocated when hull breaches opened compartments to space. 17 people who woke up that morning expecting a normal day and never saw sunset. Dr. Taeyang helped treat the wounded in the medical bay. He saw injuries he had only read about in textbooks. Burns, radiation sickness, wounds from weapons designed to tear through metal and flesh alike. He worked for hours trying to save lives while questioning everything he believed. Was this what humanity was? Were they really just violent creatures who solved problems with weapons? Had they learned nothing from their own terrible history? The remaining raiders tried to escape, but most were destroyed or captured. From their computers, Jihai recovered data that confirmed what everyone suspected. Someone had hired them specifically to attack, while the human delegation was at the council station. This was a test, but not the kind the council had officially announced. The human fleet limped back toward council space, their ships damaged and their crews exhausted. They had won the battle but possibly lost the war. By violating council orders, they had given their enemies all the ammunition needed to reject humanity permanently. When they arrived at the council station, they found a fleet of council warships waiting for them. Sleek vessels from a dozen species, all armed and ready. For a moment, Hanwol thought they would have to fight again. His fleet was in no condition for another battle, but the council ships did not attack. Instead, they escorted the humans to the docking bay. High Chancellor Vorath's voice came through the communication system, cold and formal. The human delegation was to appear before the full council immediately to answer for their actions. The council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. The air felt heavy with tension and anger. Prime Harmony Veleth spoke first, their musical voice filled with accusation. Humanity had violated the most basic rule of the evaluation. They had used military force when explicitly forbidden to do so. There could be no excuse for such disobedience. Ambassador Yuna tried to explain, but Veleth cut her off. They presented evidence of the destruction at Kepler Station, the dead raiders, the damaged human ships. They argued that humanity had proven themselves too violent. too quick to choose war over diplomacy. Other council members joined in, some agreeing with Velith, others defending humanity's actions. The chamber erupted into arguments in 100 different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. Then Observer Kill appeared in the center of the chamber, materializing from nothing as before. The argument stopped. When Kill spoke, everyone listened. Kill revealed the truth that everyone suspected but no one wanted to admit. The attack on Kepler Station was not random. It was planned by elements within the Council itself as the true test of humanity's character. The question was never whether humans could follow rules. The question was whether they would abandon their own people to follow someone else's rules. The chamber exploded into chaos. Species accused each other, ancient alliances cracked. Councillor Shirath stood up, his insect body towering over the others. He admitted organizing the test. His species, the Kethros, believed that you could only trust someone who would fight for their own people regardless of consequences. A species that would abandon their citizens for political gain was a species without honor. But Kill was not finished. The Kethros test was meant to prove humanity's honor. However, Prime Harmony Velith had known about the test and manipulated it. They ensured the raiders were heavily armed and in position to cause maximum casualties. Velith wanted humanity to fail spectacularly, to prove that humans were too dangerous to join the Council. Prime Harmony Velith did not deny it. Their collective consciousness processed information logically, without emotion. By their calculations, humanity was statistically the most violent species to ever seek Council membership. The attack proved their point. Given a difficult situation, humans chose violence. Admiral Han Wool had heard enough. He stepped forward, and something in his presence made the entire chamber fall silent. Here was a man who had commanded fleets, who had made impossible decisions, who carried the weight of thousands of deaths on his shoulders. He spoke slowly and clearly, making sure every species understood. Yes, humanity was violent. Yes, they had fought terrible wars. But every civilization in this chamber had blood on their hands. The difference was that most of them had forgotten. They had lived in peace so long they no longer understood the true cost of war. Humanity remembered. They remembered every mistake, every atrocity, every moment of madness that led them to the edge of extinction. That memory was not a weakness. It was their greatest strength. They knew what war cost, and that knowledge made them the least likely to start one unnecessarily. He looked at Prime Harmony Velith directly. The Velith wanted proof that humanity could be peaceful. But peace without the ability to defend it was not peace. It was surrender waiting to happen. The question was not whether humanity could fight. The question was whether they knew when not to fight. And humanity had proven that every day for the past 20 years since their last war ended. High Chancellor Vorath called for order and announced a recess. The Council would debate humanity's fate privately. The human delegation was dismissed. The Council took 3 days to deliberate. 3 days during which the human delegation waited in their quarters, not knowing if they would be welcomed or exiled or worse. The station felt different now. Some aliens looked at them with respect, others with fear, and some with hatred barely hidden. During those 3 days, strange things happened. Several Council species began approaching the humans privately. Ambassador Yuna found herself in secret meetings with representatives who whispered about divisions within the Council that went back thousands of years. She learned disturbing truths. The Council was not the united, peaceful organization it pretended to be. It was old and tired and divided. Some species wanted to maintain the status quo forever. Others saw humanity as a catalyst for necessary change. And a few saw humans as potential allies against threats the Council did not want to acknowledge. One night, Councillor Shirath visited Captain Jihai in the training facility where she practiced combat drills alone. The huge insect warrior watched her for a while, then spoke in his harsh clicking voice. He told her that the Kethros had studied humanity's wars carefully. They had watched recordings of battles, analyzed tactics, studied how humans fought. They saw something familiar: warriors who fought with honor even in the midst of brutal combat. Warriors who protected the weak even at cost to themselves. Shirath made an offer. If humanity joined the Council, the Kethros would support them. Together they could help restore balance to a galaxy that had grown soft. The Council's peace had made many species weak and dependent on the military power of a few strong civilizations. This was not healthy. This was not sustainable. Jihai listened carefully, but something about the offer troubled her. She asked Shirath what he really wanted. Did he want humanity as allies? Or did he want them as the galaxy's new warriors, fighting battles for species too weak or comfortable to fight their own? Shirath did not answer directly. He simply said that strength respected strength, and that the Kethros respected humanity. Then he left, leaving Jihai with more questions than answers. Dr. Taeyang spent those 3 days in crisis. The violence at Kepler Station had shaken him deeply. He could not stop thinking about the people who died, the wounds he had treated, the screams he still heard in his sleep. He began to wonder if humanity's violent nature was something that could never be overcome. He sought counsel with Prime Harmony Velith, hoping the collective consciousness could help him understand. The Velith agreed to another mind link, though they warned it would be difficult for both of them. This time, Taeyang was prepared. He shared not just memories of war, but memories of peace. He showed them human art, music that could move people to tears, poetry that captured the beauty of existence. He shared memories of parents holding children, of lovers watching sunsets, of strangers helping each other during disasters. The Velith experienced all of it, processing the data in their unique way. When the connection ended, they told Taeyang something unexpected. They understood now that humans were not simply violent. They were complex, carrying both darkness and light within them, but this made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous to a collective consciousness that valued order above all else. Taeyang left the meeting feeling even more uncertain. Was humanity's complexity their greatest strength or their fatal weakness? On the third day, Observer Kill appeared to Admiral Han Wul one final time. The mysterious being showed him something the Council had been hiding. Intelligence reports about an approaching threat called the Dreth Horde. The Dreth were an expansionist species that the Council had been monitoring for centuries. They were coming toward Council space, and when they arrived, the galaxy would face its first major war in thousands of years. Most Council species had not fought a real war in so long they had forgotten how. Their military forces were ceremonial, designed for show more than actual combat. Some Council members believed humanity could be essential allies in the coming conflict. Others feared that allowing humanity in would simply add another warlike species to an already dangerous situation. This was the real reason the Council was so divided about human membership. Kill gave Han Wul access to files about Dreth tactics and capabilities. As the Admiral studied them, his blood ran cold. The Dreth fought exactly like humanity did during their darkest wars. Total war with no regard for civilian casualties or rules of engagement. They did not conquer. They exterminated and replaced. Han Wul finally understood why the Council feared humanity. They did not fear what humans were now. They feared what humans could become if they embraced their worst impulses again. They feared humanity would look at the Dreth and see a mirror of their own past. Kill asked him a direct question. If the Dreth attacked the Council, would humanity help? Even if the Council rejected their membership, even if they were treated as outsiders, would humans still fight to protect civilizations that feared them? Han Wul thought about it for a long time. Then he gave the only answer he could. Humanity would fight not because of politics or alliances, but because the Dreth represented everything humanity had struggled to overcome. They were a reminder of what humans could have become if they had continued down their dark path. Fighting the Dreth would be fighting for the soul of humanity itself. On the fourth day, High Chancellor Vorath summoned the human delegation to the Council chamber. This time the atmosphere was different. The anger had faded, replaced by something more complex: uncertainty. Vorath announced that the Council would vote on humanity's membership within one solar day. But first, each member of the human delegation would have a chance to address the full Council one final time. This was humanity's last opportunity to make their case. The 4 humans gathered that evening to prepare. Each of them would speak about a different aspect of humanity. Dr. Taeyang would talk about human culture and capacity for growth. Captain Jihai would present humanity's strengths and how they could benefit the Council. Ambassador Yuna would make the diplomatic case, and Admiral Han Wul would provide the military perspective. But as they planned their presentations, tensions emerged within the group. Taeyang argued they should apologize for humanity's violent nature and promised to do better. Jihai countered that apologizing for their strengths would be a mistake. Yuna tried to find middle ground, but even she was uncertain about the right approach. Han Wol listened to them argue, remembering all the battles he had fought and all the choices he had made. Finally, he spoke up. They should not apologize for being human, he said. They should not promise to become something they were not. They should simply tell the truth and let the council decide. The truth was that humanity was flawed, violent, capable of terrible things. But they were also capable of incredible compassion, creativity, and courage. They had nearly destroyed themselves and chose not to. They had learned the hardest lessons any species could learn, and those lessons had made them stronger. The council did not have to like humanity. They did not have to trust them completely, but they should recognize that a species that had faced their own darkness and emerged intact was a species worth having as an ally. The next morning, the council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from every member species attended, along with observers from dozens of civilizations that were not yet council members. This vote would set a precedent that would affect galactic politics for centuries. Dr. Taeyang spoke first, his voice shaking but growing stronger as he went on. He talked about human art and music, about the philosophies that had emerged from human suffering. He showed images of Earth, beautiful and scarred, a world that had nearly died but was healing. He spoke about humanity's capacity to grow and change. Captain Jihai went next. She did not sugarcoat humanity's military capabilities. Instead, she explained that strength was not the same as aggression. Humanity's combat abilities existed to protect, not to conquer. She presented proposals for how human military expertise could help defend council space, making it clear that humanity wanted to be shields, not swords. Ambassador Yuna made the political case, arguing that the council would be strengthened by diversity. Different perspectives, different approaches to problems, different ways of thinking about the universe. Humanity would bring all of that to the table. She acknowledged that integrating a new species, especially one with humanity's history, would be challenging, but the best things in life always were. Then it was Admiral Han Wol's turn. He walked to the center of the chamber, and the entire assembly fell silent. Here was a man who had commanded fleets in real wars, who had made life and death decisions, who carried visible scars from battles fought and won. He did not give the speech they expected. He did not defend humanity's violent past or promise it would never happen again. Instead, he told them about the cost of war. He showed them images from his own memories. Young soldiers dying in his arms, cities reduced to rubble, families torn apart by conflict. He described what it felt like to give orders that sent people to their deaths. The weight of command, the burden of responsibility, the nightmares that never quite went away. He talked about the guilt that soldiers carried for the rest of their lives, even when they fought for good reasons. The voting began with the smallest species first, working up to the most powerful civilizations. Each representative stood and announced their decision in their own language, which computers translated instantly into all the others. Some voted for humanity, believing that the galaxy needed their strength and perspective. Others voted against, fearing the chaos that such a violent species might bring. The numbers were close, terrifyingly close. Every single vote mattered. Ambassador Yuna watched the count with her heart racing. Dr. Taeyang could not watch at all, staring at his hands instead. Captain Jihai stood rigid at attention, her military training hiding the fear she felt inside. Admiral Han Wol remained perfectly calm, accepting whatever outcome would come. When it came time for Prime Harmony Velith to vote, everyone expected rejection. The collective consciousness had been humanity's strongest opponent from the beginning. They had argued passionately against human membership, presenting logical evidence of human violence and unpredictability. But Velith surprised everyone. Their musical voice filled the chamber with an unexpected announcement. They would abstain from voting. Logic, they explained, could not account for all variables. Some decisions required something beyond pure calculation. Humanity was unpredictable in ways that troubled the Velith, but perhaps unpredictability was not always wrong. Perhaps the universe needed chaos as much as order. The chamber erupted in whispers and clicks and sounds that had no human equivalent. Velith had never abstained from a vote in recorded history. Their position was always clear, always logical, always certain. This change meant something profound had happened within their collective consciousness. The vote continued through the remaining species. Councillor Shirath voted for humanity as expected. Several other warrior species followed his lead. But enough peaceful civilizations voted against that the final decision came down to one being: High Chancellor Vorath of the Telvari Collective. Vorath stood slowly, his silicon body moving with the weight of thousands of years. The Telvari lived so long that they saw civilizations rise and fall like seasons changing. Vorath himself had witnessed 3 major galactic wars and countless smaller conflicts. He had seen what violence could do to the galaxy. The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone waited for his decision, knowing it would shape galactic politics for generations to come. Vorath spoke in his slow, grinding voice. He said that in all his years he had learned one important truth. Peace was not the absence of conflict. Peace was the choice not to pursue conflict when other options existed. The question was not whether humanity was violent. The question was whether they understood when violence was necessary and when it was not. At Kepler Station, humanity had shown they would fight to protect their own. But they had also shown restraint. They used only the force necessary to complete their mission. They took prisoners when they could. They tried to save hostages even at great risk to themselves. These were not the actions of mindless aggressors. These were the actions of warriors with honor and judgment. Vorath voted for humanity's admission to the Council. But with significant conditions, the chamber erupted in noise. Some species celebrated, others protested. It took Vorath several minutes to restore order. When he finally could speak again, he explained the conditions. Humanity would be granted provisional membership for a period of 50 Earth years. During that time, they could not establish military bases in Council space beyond their embassy. Their fleet size would be capped at current levels. They would be required to submit to regular evaluations of their conduct. Most significantly, humanity would be expected to help defend the Council against external threats. When the Dreth Horde arrived, as intelligence suggested they would within the next century, humanity would be called upon to fight. Ambassador Yuna felt her stomach sink as she heard the conditions. This was not the equal membership they had hoped for. Humanity was being welcomed not as true partners but as junior members, restricted and monitored. Worse, they were being positioned as the galaxy's warriors, expected to fight battles that other species were unwilling or unable to fight themselves. The human delegation was given one day to decide whether to accept these terms. They gathered in their quarters to discuss what to do. Dr. Taiyang was furious. He argued they should reject the offer and prove humanity did not need the Council. These restrictions were insulting, treating humans like dangerous children who needed constant supervision. Accepting them would validate every negative stereotype about human violence. Captain Jihai disagreed. Having restrictions did not change humanity's fundamental rights to exist and explore the galaxy. The provisional status was temporary. If humans proved themselves over 50 years, they could renegotiate for full membership. Refusing now would mean isolation for potentially centuries. Ambassador Yuna saw both sides. The terms were unfair, but they were also a diplomatic opening that could be expanded over time. She had spent her whole life studying negotiations and knew that sometimes you had to accept small victories and build on them. Getting into the Council, even with restrictions, was better than staying outside. They debated for hours, going in circles. Finally, Admiral Hanwol made the decision. As the senior member of the delegation, the final call was his. They would accept the Council's offer. Not because the terms were fair, he explained. Not because they were happy with the restrictions or comfortable being positioned as warriors. They would accept because the alternative was worse. Isolation would not protect humanity from the Dreth or any other threat. Refusing would abandon billions of innocent beings to face dangers they could not handle alone. More importantly, accepting showed the galaxy something crucial about human nature. Humanity was willing to help even when not fully trusted. They were willing to fight to protect others even when those others looked down on them. That generosity of spirit, that willingness to do what was right regardless of recognition, was something the galaxy needed to see. The next day, Ambassador Yuna stood before the Council and announced humanity's acceptance of the terms. The formal ceremony was brief but significant. Humanity became the newest provisional member of the Galactic Council, with all the restrictions and responsibilities that entailed. 3 months passed. The human delegation became permanent representatives on the council station. The work was hard and often frustrating, but slowly progress was made. Captain Ji-Hai established a military training program, teaching Council Defense Forces human tactics and strategies. Her most eager students were from the Kethros Empire, who appreciated the practical, no-nonsense approach to combat. She made it clear that she was not teaching them how to make war, but how to prevent it through strength and preparedness. Dr. Tae Yang created a cultural exchange program that brought together species from across the galaxy. He organized art exhibitions, music performances, philosophical debates. Slowly, aliens who had feared humanity began to see them as individuals rather than stereotypes. Friendships formed across species lines, proving that understanding could grow from simple contact. Ambassador Yuna navigated the complex web of council politics with skill and patience. She built alliances carefully, never pushing too hard but never backing down from important principles. Every few weeks she managed to get another small restriction on humanity reduced or another privilege expanded. Progress was slow, but it was real. Admiral Han Wool spent his days meeting with council military leaders, sharing intelligence about the approaching Dreth threat, and helping prepare defenses. He also spent time mentoring young officers from various species, teaching them not just tactics but the philosophy behind them, when to fight and when to negotiate, when to show strength and when to show mercy. One evening, 6 months after humanity's admission, Han Wool stood in an observation deck looking at Earth through the long-range view screen. A young human officer approached him nervously, asking if they had made the right choice accepting the council's terms. Han Wool was quiet for a long time. Then he told the officer something he had learned over decades of command. There were no right choices in peace or in war. There were only necessary choices. You made the best decision you could with the information available, accepted the consequences, and tried to do better next time. Humanity's journey had always been about learning from mistakes and growing from failures. Every generation tried to be better than the one before. That pattern would continue whether humanity was isolated or part of the galactic community, but being part of the council gave them a chance to share those lessons with others. The council would learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for war. It was their capacity for change. They would prove that a species born from conflict could become a force for peace, not by denying their nature but by understanding it and choosing wisely when to use their strength and when to show restraint. The young officer seemed satisfied with that answer and left. Han Wool remained at the viewport watching the stars. Far away at the edge of known space, the Dreth Horde continued its slow advance toward Council territory. Their fleet was massive, their intentions clear. When they arrived, the galaxy would face a test unlike anything in recent history. T.